It's naturally an extremely tough trick to pull off, to convince audiences that the murderous force that they've been rooting against is now a good guy. But when it works, it can help reinvent a franchise forevermore. I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and here are 10 horror sequels that turned the villain into a hero. Number 9. Laurie, Happy Death Day to You. In the original Happy Death Day, the babyface killer is eventually revealed to be protagonist Tree's jealous roommate Laurie, who Tree ultimately kills by kicking her out of a window. But in the wacky sequel, Happy Death Day to You offers up a fun multiversal twist on the original concept, as Tree ends up in an alternate dimension where she meets a variant of Laurie who hasn't got a murderous bone in her body. She's nice, and to make matters more complicated, she's also being targeted by the new killer herself this time, and so teams with Tree and her boyfriend Carter to take the killer down. If we're splitting hairs, the original version of Laurie never turned good, given that she's dead and all, but the universe-hopping gimmick nevertheless allowed us to see what Laurie would be like without her own killer tendencies. With a third film recently being confirmed by filmmaker Christopher Landon and star Jessica Roth, it'll be interesting to see if Laurie returns again in any capacity. Number 8. Daniel Robitaille, Candyman 2021. Now, to be fair, Daniel Robitaille, aka Candyman, played by the late, great, wonderful Tony Todd, may be the murderous hook-handed villain of the Candyman franchise, but he's also inherently sympathetic, given that he only became Candyman after being lynched by a mob for the grand crime of falling in love with a white woman. Still, he's a killer entity all the same, though 2021's Candyman more explicitly reinvented the character as something of a crusader for justice, in particular, a vengeful entity against police brutality. In the film's climax, Brianna ends up summoning the Candyman to kill the corrupt cops who murdered her boyfriend Anthony. Though Candyman initially resembles Anthony, he ultimately transforms into Daniel, before turning to Brianna and urging her to tell everyone about what she has seen. While Candyman had a more vicious streak in the original run of films, by the end of the 2021 sequel, he's trained his focus more explicitly on killing evildoers and serving as an emblem for blue-on-black violence. Number 7. Godzilla, Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster. In the original 1954 Godzilla, the monster is the physical embodiment of the fear of nuclear obliteration in post-war Japan, emerging from the sea as a result of underwater hydrogen bomb testing. But given the sizable human body count he racks up, he's still a villain in his own right. Numerous Godzilla sequels swiftly followed, offering up varied depictions of the creature, but it wasn't until 1964's Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster, that he was more explicitly portrayed as a heroic entity. This time around, Godzilla puts the city-wrecking crusade aside to team up with Rodan and Mothra to battle space dragon King Ghidorah, who threatens to annihilate Earth. Granted, Godzilla's disposition has changed on a dime between movies over the decades, but this marked a major turning point for the character, where he was more often depicted as a protector of Earth, no matter the fresh hell he was also capable of raising if he felt like it. Number 6. Norman Nordstrom, Don't Breathe 2. Now, just because a sequel attempts to reinvent a prior villain as a hero, that doesn't mean that audiences en masse are actually going to accept it, and there's no better recent example of this than Don't Breathe 2. While the original film initially depicted blind burglary victim Norman Nordstrom, played by Stephen Lang, as sympathetic, this largely evaporated once it was revealed that he kidnapped the woman who killed his young daughter in a car accident, chained her up in his basement, and forcibly impregnated her to replace the child he lost. In the sequel, however, Norman is reimagined as a protector-type character who takes on a gang of even worse folk who are planning to kidnap his adopted daughter, Phoenix. Yet audiences couldn't so easily forget Norman's horrible actions in the first picture, so no matter how hard he fought to protect Phoenix in the sequel, his heroic rehabilitation ended up falling rather flat despite the filmmaker's efforts. Number 5. Nemesis, Resident Evil, Apocalypse. Paul W.S. Anderson's original Resident Evil ends with Alice's pal Matt being whisked away by the Umbrella scientists after his arm wound starts to mutate, with the scientists noting they're going to put him in the Nemesis program. And any card-carrying fan of the games knows precisely what that means. Lo and behold, when sequel Resident Evil Apocalypse rolls around, Matt is now totally unrecognizable, having been fully transformed into the grotesque Umbrella super soldier known as Nemesis. Though Nemesis was an outright villain in the video game series, here he's ultimately given an anti-heroic reinvention in the third act, as Alice manages to tease out what remains of his humanity and persuade him to fight back against Umbrella instead. Ultimately, Nemesis dies battling Umbrella and protecting Alice, a divisive creative decision given that it's such a far cry from his characterization in the video game franchise, though considering that Nemi is Alice's friend deep down, it doesn't come entirely out of left field. Number 4. Norman Bates, Psycho 4: The Beginning. Psycho's serial killer Norman Bates embarks on a villain-hero flip-flop throughout the entire franchise, which seems content to say that Norman is an incredibly troubled man due to his abusive childhood, but that deep down he's trying to be good. In Psycho 2, Norman is released from prison after doing his time and apparently being cured, though by the film's end reverts to his killer ways. In the third film, Norman continues to wrestle with his murderous urges and ends up institutionalized. But in the series' final film, Psycho 4: The Beginning, Norman has again been rehabilitated and released, though yet again fights against his dark proclivities. The difference this time, however, is that Norman successfully fends them off, breaking free of Mother's control, burning his childhood home down, and moving on with his life once and for all. Norman is a complicated character at the best of times, but by the end of Psycho 4, it seems like he's finally triumphed over his troubled past for good. Number 3. Tiffany Valentine, Seed of Chucky. First off, let's put a big fat asterisk next to this entry because, as ever, it's all about the character's intent. In Bride of Chucky, we're introduced to Chucky's former lover and accomplice Tiffany, who he ends up trapping inside a bride doll. By film's end, Tiffany gives birth to a child, and in the next sequel, Seed of Chucky, Tiff makes a concerted effort to renounce her killer ways in order to set a good example for her gender-fluid offspring, Glenn or Glenda. Hell, Tiff even tries to convince Chucky to stop the killing too, albeit to no avail. Granted, Tiff's non-violent new leaf doesn't last all that long, with the ending outright confirming that she's relapsed into violent insanity. But for a time there, she really was trying to be a good person for the sake of her kid. Plus, can you really blame her for killing Redman, considering the misogynistic bile he was spouting beforehand? Number 2. Megan 2.0. Given that the first Megan ended with the demise of the murderously protective AI doll, fans were desperate to find out how the impending sequel, Megan 2.0, would find a way to bring her back. And as it turns out, filmmaker Jared Johnston has taken a page out of Terminator 2's book by reimagining Megan as a kick-ass anti-hero. The sequel, which takes place 2 years after the first film, kicks off with Megan's advanced technology being stolen and used by a defense contractor to build a military robot called Amelia, which predictably becomes self-aware and attempts to take over the world. And so, faced with no other option, Megan's creator, Gemma, decides to rebuild an upgraded Megan to battle Amelia and hopefully save the world. It's a hilariously loony way to one-up the original film's premise, and while it's reasonable to assume that Megan won't be a squeaky clean hero, she'll nevertheless be fighting on the side of humanity. Number 1. Predator: The Predator, 2018. Though the Predators have been shown to have an honor system of sorts ever since the first film, they're still extraterrestrial monsters with a penchant for killing humans. But Shane Black's 2018 The Predator offered up the most heroic iteration of the Predator yet, who crash lands on Earth and isn't terribly pleased about being experimented upon by scientists. And honestly, who can blame them? Sure, the Predator kills its fair share of humans while making its escape, only to then be killed itself by a massive upgraded Predator, but it also ends up doing humanity a massive solid. At the end of the movie, once the upgraded Predator has been defeated, hero Quinn learns that the original Predator left behind a present for humanity, which scientists have dubbed the Predator Killer. The gift is an Iron Man-esque armoured suit, which will allow humans to put up a fair fight against a fleet of upgraded Predators, which are implied to be making their way towards Earth. Given that Predators are traditionally all about fighting fair, and the upgraded ones seem to have little interest in this, the original Predator who crash landed on Earth did humans a huge favour by bequeathing them that suit.